How's it going? Welcome to a constructed set review for Crimson Vow. If you've never watched one of my set reviews before, they're a little bit different than a lot of the complete set reviews you'll see a lot of other content creators make, as opposed to going over literally every card in the set and telling you 800 times this card sucks in constructed, it might be playable in limited, etc. My set reviews have a constructed focus. I largely only play standard and historic, so I'm going to be looking at these cards from that perspective. Largely, we might have a few, hey, this card's a neat EDH card or a novel design thrown in, but largely just going to be skipping over the chaff in this review and focusing just on things that I might think might make some impact and talk about why we might make some impact in the constructed format. So without further ado, let's dive in, huh? This is this first card is kind of a banger. So like you look at this, it's expensive in terms of mana to start. And you read the front half and you're like, "Oh, this is fine, right?" Like it's a 4/4 for 6 with hexproof that, you know, puts 2 counters on another something every turn. And then you flip over to the backside, you're like, what the fuck? 6/6, other permanents you control have hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 1/1 counters on every creature you control. And remember, for those that haven't really played with the werewolf mechanic before, remember that if you have other werewolves in your deck that trigger that day-night cycle, you can play this card as the backside the turn you play it. Like, in a deck that has other playable wolves that can play this on the backside on turn 5 or 6, like, you're going to end the game real fast. Like, honestly, even without the other permanents you control get hexproof, like, just the rest of this is just very good. And the front side is like fine, right? Like maybe this front side is playable on its own. The back side is really impressive. We've seen the green decks playing that enchantment that doubles the attack and defense of your creatures every combat step, and I think we could see this card slot into a very similar role to that. The backside has a similar effect while also being a body on its own, so it's not just dead when it draws itself. Yeah, the backside pumps itself every turn too, so I would not be surprised to see if this slots into the top end of green decks. You assume it fills a different role than the green wolf titan. Well, the green wolf titan hasn't really seen much play. It's been, that card's a little bit slow and clicky. And honestly, there could be, in terms of, is this card playable, there's also some question of, do you need this go over the top style of effect? Like, is this good enough to kill the Epiphany decks? So the fact that it has hexproof goes a long way, I think. So maybe, we'll see. Very possible that this sees play, I think. All right, this next thing is technically a cycle of cards. So we've got Cemetery, Desecrator. We've got 5 different Cemetery cards that all impact the graveyard. So 6 mana, 4/4 with Menace. Then when it enters the battlefield or dies, exile another card from a graveyard. When you do, you get to remove X counters from a permanent or give a creature -X/-X, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. So really big Ravenous Chupacabra Necrotal design, depending on what era of Magic you're from. The fact that it's incidental graveyard hate while doing that also gets to trigger not only when it enters play, but also when it dies, could make this somewhat reasonable. I will say the fact that they gave this modal options here, but none of the modes on it allow it to be particularly good against control feels a little bit bad. So the fact that this card is like only good against decks that play to the board, meaning that it's going to be really bad into like the Epiphany deck. So I could see this being okay depending on what the metagame looks like, but I think if we're still living in an Epiphany format, I think this probably won't see play. In a more mid-rangey format that cares about people playing to the board and you want to generate card advantage, like for example, we saw Storm the Festival decks be pretty popular before Epiphany took over. In a world where Storm the Festival is something that you want to be doing, this card is very good against Storm the Festival decks. It generates card advantage when it comes into play, and it cleans up a Storm out of your opponent's graveyard. So this one is one that's definitely contextual based on the format. And if the format doesn't change, and it might, but it also might not, I think this one is probably not going to see play. But if we see a move back towards those more green mid-range decks, I think this is very playable. Cemetery Gatekeeper. 2/1, first strike, enters play, exiles a card from a graveyard. Whenever a player plays a land or casts a spell, if it shares a card type with the exile card, this deals 2 damage to that player. So interesting that you could exile a land with this, and then you could deal 2 damage to your opponent every time they put a land into play. Obviously, they'd have to have had a land in their graveyard, but it's neat that they templated it in a way that allows for that to happen. If there's a red aggressive deck or perhaps a vampire deck in the format, this seems very reasonable. Like 2/1, first strike, pretty okay stat line in general. Has an extra bit of static text on here that also helps you kill the opponent faster in addition to being incidental graveyard hate. Oh, that's true actually. It's 2021, and this card's symmetrical, isn't it? Whenever any player plays a land or casts a spell, and it can be your graveyard, sure. So you could fit this into self mill and then deal 2 damage to people, right? No, play a land just means put a land into play. Cemetery Illuminator. When it enters or attacks, exile a card. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Once per turn, you may cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with Cemetery Illuminator. This card's really sweet. The stat line on here for the mana cost is like pretty reasonable. It is a sustained source of graveyard interaction. It hits it every turn. And most notably here, it generates card advantage for you, right? This one notably does not do lands. It says cast explicitly, but it does let you cast extra spells. So that seems super sweet. The fact that it exiles multiple cards means you can get like, creature, instant, and sorcery on tier to cast lots of different things off the top of your deck. So I think this one's pretty likely to see some amount of play. This is just a good individually good card. Cemetery Protector. When it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Notably has Flash. I like Flash cards, chat. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell that shares a card type with the exiled card, get a 1/1 white human token. I will say, from a design perspective, and I think they probably did it based on power level, it's weird to me that they went out of their way to have the white and red cards in this cycle include lands, but the blue one does not. The white and red are by far the worst. I don't think I agree with that at all. This card seems fine. In fact, so far I would say probably the black one seems the worst of the cycle. I think the black. What's the green one too? I think the red one's very good. 3/4 vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card type they share with cards exiled by Cemetery Prowler. So, in a vacuum, this card seems very good. However, Magic the Gathering cards don't exist in a vacuum. And when you look at the other green 3-mana spells in this format, especially when you consider, we have the Briar Bridge Tracker that doesn't cost double green, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if this card ends up not seeing that much play. because it simply isn't really better than, you know, the troll, for example, right? Like the 4/4 that then comes back and makes another 4/4. The competition for three mana green cards is high. Hey, welcome to Dante Slayer. Thanks for the over 3 years and congrats on the new addition to your family. It's exciting. It's a wolf and can fit into a deck that cares about that. I'd be kind of surprised if that's the case. Triggers Willow Guys, yes. I don't know. The blue one's probably better at doing that, right? Chandra Dress to Kill. This card's sweet. I don't know if this card will be very good in Standard, but I'm excited to play with this card in Historic for 4 and like Historic for sure in like a big red deck. Yeah, it's like a mini Torch of Defiance, right? So +1 adds a mana and deals a damage to something. Can exile the top card of your library, and then you get to play it if it's red. Then exile the top 5 cards of your deck. You get to cast red spells from among them. You get an emblem that says whenever you cast a red spell, it deals X damage, where X is equal to that. Honestly, I hadn't actually made that connection that this is just like Chandra Torch of Defiance, like scaled down for 3 mana and focused on red, but that's exactly what this is. Yeah, and in Historic, you could play this and Torch of Defiance together. We'll move it. Thanks for the almost year and a half. Welcome back. And Sodded, thanks for the over 2 years. So yeah, whether or not this one will be standard playable is tough to call, because like, do we have enough just red cards to make this good? Maybe. But like in Historic, I can play this on 3 and I can play Glorybringer off of her on 4, which curves very nicely. Could also curve her into 5 mana Sarkin, the Planeswalker there. Sweet EDH card. Probably not constructed playable, but man, is it gas in some of the Brawl decks that we've played. Power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. When it enters the battlefield, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tap. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. Yeah, we played Tatiova on stream a couple of times. Gitrog Monster too. Yeah, both those decks will love this 7-drop. Faithbound Judge. This card is the first one that we've talked about that goes into contention for cards Jeff will be paid the most money to lose with on stream. This is a 4/4 for 3. The beginning of your upkeep, if it has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, drop a judgment counter on it. As long as it has 3 or more judgment counters on it, can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So flying Defender Vigilance here. And then it has Disturb. So this flashes back for 7 mana into a Sinner's Judgment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on this. If there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment will be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So, what's the thought on this? So, the beginning of your upkeep. This means the person who, at the beginning of your upkeep, does that mean the person who's cast it upkeep, or the person who's enchanted by the curses upkeep? So people said yes, but I asked 2 different things. Okay, so they could have templated this to let you kill Aldurin's Epiphany's players with it, but instead it's templated so you have to take 3 turns. That's so sad. Like, why? Like the templating on this makes me think that they had to have missed the taking turns deck in Standard. Like, I feel like there's no way you template this card like this if you expect... Yeah, I mean, this makes Aldrin's Epiphany better, right? If you wanted to do that. Like, there's been a blue-white Epiphany deck kiting around the edges of the format, and this seems like a fine win condition for blue-white Epiphany. Feel like you're never resolving a 7-mana spell against Epiphany deck? Sure, but like, think about this. The front half is good into the Epiphany decks. Like, it's a 4/4 that you get to play early on 3 that then attacks to kill them late, and it trades with Goldspan Dragon and Ashmouth. So, like, you're like, yeah, you wouldn't put Sinner's Judgment in your deck against a blue-red deck, but you'd sure as shit put Faithbound Judge in your deck against the Epiphany decks. A front side has Defender. All right, I'm going to give you a 10-minute timeout to read the card because you weren't listening when I read the card. So, reading is busted during spoiler season, chat. Moving along. Dominathi. 1/3 for 4. The beginning of combat on your turn, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Each player sacrifices a creature. You draw a card and lose a life, or transform our vampire friend. Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Each creature you control with Flying, Death Touch, and or Lifelink gets +1 attack until end of turn. This card's really sweet. So if you are playing an aggressive matchup, you could flip this right away, and it's very good on defense. And if you're playing a controlling matchup, you could play this on 4 and then have it cantrip itself before you flip it over the following turn and start attacking and dumping mana into it. So I'd be pretty surprised if this doesn't see some amount of play. Seems like a very reasonable card overall. Cards that like have a playable text box like this that can replace themselves right away tend to be pretty strong and reasonably constructed playable. So I think this one is likely to see some amount of what am I playing? What's the home for this card? There could be a vampires deck. There could be the black. It's not a fixed Rankle. It's just a different Rankle, different style of card. This card isn't nearly as aggressive as Rankle. Rankle's like a black like hasty dragon. This is not a hasty dragon. This is like a defensive card. This is like a black mid range card. So what kind of decks want this? The Blood on the Snow decks is the easy place to start, but there might also be other new decks that want to try it. What's going on, Timid? Thanks for the 2 months. Welcome back. All right, Inspector. Chat, never underestimate a merfolk looter, and that's what this is. This card's not bad. This card is super reasonable. It's legendary, but it can exile extra copies of itself, and then it has extra upside too, right? Like you could keep drawing and exiling with it, but then you could flip it over, and the backside lets you start casting / playing the cards that you've been looting away. So the front side of this is pretty reasonable, decent fixing, and then the backside lets you turn it into a real source of card advantage, which is nice. Thanks for the follow, Vidicent. Kaya, Geist Hunter. Creatures you control get Death Touch. Put a 1/1 counter on one target creature you control. Until end of turn, if one or more tokens would be created under your control, create twice that many tokens instead. Hey, chat. You know what token isn't legendary? Renin 7's token. You know what other token isn't legendary? The cat tokens from the Cadillac. Yeah, you curve this into Cadillac. Oh, the counter is only on a token. Good shout. Yeah, so it's probably some kind of Abzan pile. Yeah, it technically doubles Epiphany Birds, but doubling Epiphany Birds isn't super great. This also what's the Blood Avatar token? Yeah, without splashing a color, she can double up Lilith tokens. So a lot of really easy, obvious synergies with other good cards in the set. That being said, and this is the tough part about this card, I know this is only 3 mana, but Kaya, like, this card literally does nothing on her own, right? So this card from a deck building perspective seems like there's a lot of knobs you could twist and turn with it that might be decent. That being said, the fact that neither her plus nor minus do anything without other stuff is this one could go either way. One thing to note is, and this is something to think about too, other than Ranger's class, is there anything else? Yeah, Ranger's class on 2 means you could play Kaya on 3 and actually put a counter on something. Are there any other playable 1 or 2 mana cards that make token creatures in Standard right now? Or is it just Ranger's class? Are there any others that are escaping my memory? There's the human dance card. Okay. Yeah, and that card's good with her -2 as well. Join the dance. So yeah, I could see maybe Abzan seems like it could be a good place to start for building with this. Mana Form Hellkite. 4 mana, 4/4 flyer. When you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX red dragon with flying and haste, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. So this is a card where after we get to rotation, and I know this is forever away, but this is the way my brain works because it like slots cards like this away, is this card could see play after rotation next fall, but I would be kind of surprised if this card sees play inside of the current format. Yeah, not only does this compete with Goldspan Dragon, but this very directly competes with Ashmouth Dragon, right? And I think Ashmouth is probably the better card on average than this one. And I think between Ashmouth and Goldspan Dragon, you don't really have room for another effect like this. Yeah, there's Moonveil as well. So I think this one, I probably wouldn't be surprised if this one doesn't find a home. I think there's just other cards that do something similar but do it better. Necro Duality. This seems like a probably not good but definitely great card. So whenever a non-token zombie enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Notably, and this is the tough part about playing a card like this, is if you're trying to play this in Standard, this is a 4 mana card that doesn't impact the board the turn you play it. And this card makes you want to save your creatures for after you've cast this enchantment. So I think this is a sweet one that's probably going to be an EDH card and not really a Standard or whatever. The prices over here, chat, you should ignore for now because the set's not released in Standard yet. So these are just like miscellaneous. These are like pre-order guessing prices, chat. Plus, paper magic, all that jazz. All right, 3 mana, 1/2 training. Whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, it gets a 1/1 counter. Whenever it trains, exile one other target creature from the battlefield or a creature card in a graveyard. And then when it leaves the battlefield, put all the exiled cards onto the battlefield under their owner's control. So this design is really sweet. It is. This is a Banisher Priest Reanimator split card. And notably, yeah, this is a leaves the battlefield effect too. So this card could maybe, Angel Serenity put things back in your hand, right? Did Angel Serenity put them in the play? I thought she was back to hand, right? Yeah, this is a card that in Historic specifically seems very good. Yeah, Serenity put cards back to hand. I played a ton of that Standard format. Zombie Slim Jim, thanks for the half a year. Welcome back. It's not even just a Banisher Priest. It, like, the reanimate potential on here is insane. You think it's ambitious for your white creature deck to have to attack with a 2+ power creature? Who's surprised that that thought came from a gift sub? Why? Damn it, gift subs! Yes, my creature deck is going to have a hard time attacking with creatures. And again, focusing on historic, this is also a card that costs 3 or less mana, right? So you could end step Collected Company into this plus basically anything else and then get the trigger with it. Yeah, like the flexibility on this card I think is very, very good. Sorin the Mirthless, chat. 4 mana, 4 loyalty. Look at the top card of your library. Seems ambitious. Call. 1 build around, please. Thanks for the biddies, Jareth. I need to write that down. Savior of Allenbach. You want standard or historic, Jareth? Any preference? All right. Sorin the Mirthless. Look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to its mana value. So draw a card on the plus on a 4 mana Planeswalker is really good. And obviously you lose life sometimes, but it's optional, right? So when you're going to take a hit. And we get an almost Vampire Nighthawk, 2/3 black vampire token with flying and lifelink is really strong. Yeah, it draws lands for free. And notably, we start on 4 loyalty, and this is a -2. So this is a Planeswalker that's very good in multiples as well, because you can play this on 4, tick it down on turn 5, get another token, and then play the next one out from your hand. So yeah, this is another card that Kaya curves into this elegantly, right? You could technically curve Kaya, Sorin, Lilith, right? 3, 4, 5. And then deals 13 damage to any target. You gain 13 life. Sure. So the down tick here is going to win you games from a lot of spots, and it gains you life back that you might have lost with the plus. This card seems very strong. I honestly, we don't really have this card's probably historic playable, red black mid-range style stuff. This card seems great there. Wheeze, thanks for the follow. I like this one a lot. We're gonna play a lot of Sorin for sure. Toxrill the Corrosive. At the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. Whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. Sacrifice a slug, draw a card. Well, this is a sweet Brawl Commander. I don't know if this is good enough as a control finisher. You're going to play this and you're going to get just Fading Hoped into Oblivion and back. Yeah, notably the slime counters stop working if Toxrill leaves play. Yeah, so it technically kills Aldruin's Epiphany Birds, but it's also 7 mana, so good luck keeping it in play or resolving it. Yeah, this is a commander card, but it's a sweet design, so I want to talk about it. Volatile Arsonist. Menace Haste. 4/4. When attacks, deals 1 damage to each of up to 1 target creature, player, or planeswalker. When an attack, deals 2 damage to each of target creature, player, or planeswalker. Sure. Yes, and or. Sorry, I think I said or. It's and or. There's an or in there, chat. It's and or. So you can do it to both. That's fine. So you attack for 5 on the front side. You attack for 7 on the back side. Yeah, Menace is solid evasion. Yeah, on the knight side, this attacks for 7 the turn you play it, which seems very, very reasonable. This card competes with the dragons of the format. I mean, it goes in different decks, right? Like, it's got a Goldspan Dragon-esque type line, but it allows you to be interactive too. So it's more mid-rangey than rampy. Crimhorn, thanks for the 2/3 of a year. Welcome back. Alchemist Gambit. Chat, I know we've all been hurt by extra turns, and will continue to be hurt by extra turns until Wizards of the Coast decides we're allowed to have fun while playing Magic the Gathering again. But this is not an offensive extra turns card. Aldrin's Epiphany is good because it makes birds. Aldrin's Epiphany is good because it hides itself from discard spells. A 7 mana just take an extra turn spell is... Honestly, this card is going to teach people that Aldrin's Epiphany is offensive because of its extras, not just because it says take a turn. Yeah, this is actually kind of a sweet design. We might play this in Historic inside of Vodrock taking turns. So, oh, it exiles itself, so probably not even good there, honestly. Ange, Maid of Dishonor. Whenever Ange and or other vampires enter the battlefield, you get a blood token. Sacrifice another creature or blood token. Each opponent loses 2 and you gain a life. Blood tokens are artifacts that you pay 1 and sacrifice to discard a card, draw a card. Cute. Yeah, they're kind of like clues. Not quite, though. The stat line on here is okay. The fact that it doesn't play well with extra copies of itself is kind of awkward. So, probably not a constructed player. Ascendant Pack Leader. Enters a battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a 1/1 counter on this. This seems fine. Green aggro probably likes this card. Maybe this is a card that sees play in the Wolf deck as 1-drop. Yeah, the Wolf deck definitely felt like it wanted a 1-drop, and like a 1-drop with upside into the mid to late game. It's like more than fine. Blood Vial Purveyor. 5/6 for 4. When an opponent casts a spell, they get a blood token. Whenever it attacks, it gets 1 attack for each blood token the defending player controls. Bionic Quail, thanks for the 26 months. Welcome back. Oh, and chat, you will notice over here, the Oracle text is different than the printed text here because Wizards of the Coast has decided they need to errata this card because they missed a bit of rules text. So it doesn't permanently gain the extra attack. It gets it on the right side. But remember, chat, changing the text of Magic the Gathering cards is going to kill the game, and we can't errata digital cards because it would kill the game. So, asterisk details. By invitation only, choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. Love the design on this. These kind of pseudo sweeper cards that give you control over what exactly you're killing or how much. Yeah, the fact I really like that this is a pseudo sweeper that you can play very easily inside of a creature deck, right? Yeah, Yeah, so like white-based aggressive decks can play this card and keep some amount of their board while being able to sweep a majority or all of the opponent's board. Think this will see Eternal play? Yeah, maybe. You choose the number when it resolves, right? I'd assume. Yeah, you choose when it resolves. Change of Fortune. Discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. I don't think that this one's going to be standard playable, but perhaps something in Historic could happen with this card with madness effects or other things that lets you discard, because notably, this lets you count all the cards you've discarded for the turn, not just the cards that this card discards. There's a chance to get value off of discarding other things and then casting this to draw a bunch back up. That being said, it is 4 mana. So it is 4 mana, so maybe it's a little bit slow. But could, yeah, something like Faithless Looting could maybe be okay. Concealing Curtains. 0/4 for 1 with Defender. That you can pay 3 to flip it over into a 3/4 with Menace that gets to look at the opponent's hand, and then you get to discard a card to let them draw a new card. I think this card is sweet. Like, it's kind of a 4 mana 3/4 Menace Vendilion click. Sorcery on the activation is sorcery on the activation. Yeah, I like this card a lot. It's also like an okay threat that plays early to the board that blocks against aggro. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, good. This type of design is good against aggro, but this effect is also good against control. And then, of course, there's the asterisk that, well, unfortunately, they're going to hide their Aldrin's Epiphany for you. But, you know, sans Aldrin's Epiphany, this card's very good against combo and control. Demonic Bargain. Exile the top 13 cards of your library. Search your library for a card. Put it into your hand and shuffle. This could be sweet with Tainted Pack in Historic. It's kind of not quite Demonic Tutor, but it's close. It does cost 3 mana as opposed to 2, but 3 is not quite 4, so I could see this one seeing some amount of play. Pretty good chance if there's a 4-of you want out of your deck and you cast this, that the odds of exiling all 4 copies of 4-of are very, very low. Dig it up. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So it is lay the land on the front part. And then if you cleave this, you get to go get any... So if you cleave, you pretend the bracketed words aren't there. So search your library for a card, put it into your hand, shuffle. So this is another Demonic Pact-esque card that has some flexibility on the front side. Cleave is Diabolic Tutor. I like this design too. I think there's a good chance this one sees some play. Vengeful Victim. 4/4 flying for 2. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. Disturbs back. Enchanted creature has, when this creature attacks, create a 4/4 spirit token with flying, tapped and attacking. So build your own Geist of Saint trash. Could be okay. If there's a blue-white aggressive evasive deck, this could be fine. The front side is kind of Boros Charm adjacent. So the real question here is there a supporting cast for this card in the format that wants to play blue-white aggressive shell, basically? Dreadfast Demon. Beginning of your end step, sacrifice a non-demon creature. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Dreadfeast Demon. So the first turn you get a second demon. The next turn you turn creatures into 2 more demons, and then your opponent dies soon after. Definitely a sweet EDH card. Probably too slow and clunky for standard, but neat piece of top end for sure. Dream Shackle Geist. Beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Tap target creature. Target creature doesn't untap during its next untap step. Sure. We just looked a second ago at a card and we said, hey, is there a blue-white aggressive deck in the format that wants to support this? This could be a card that helps an archetype like that as well. So, okay, stat line, evasion, taps, blockers, keeps. Very, very difficult card to race here, right? So you can tap blockers that are staying back, or you can lock down things that are going to be attacking you. This design's very different than things like Click and Borrower. Edgar Charmed Groom. Other vampires you control get 1/1. When it dies, return it to the battlefield transformed. At the beginning of your upkeep, make a 1/1 white-black vampire token with lifelink and put a bloodline counter on here. Then if there are 3 or more bloodline counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. Yeah. This is super reasonable, right? Like, even just pretending, like, take a second and pretend that this line of text isn't here, right? Like, just like, it's a 4/4 that you trade it. Yeah, like, pretend like you're playing this with no vampires in your deck. It's just a nice sticky threat that gets grindy. This card is fine in multiples. So you notably don't get to control when this flips back. But if you play a second one, you start giving the vampires a little bit bigger sooner. Oh, wait, I guess it dies, right? So it flips, and then this one turns into the... Okay, right, the Legend Rule just makes a coffin? Sure. Yeah, never mind, I'm wrong. Yeah, this card is great in multiples. Yeah, honestly, you just... Like, even without any other vampires in your deck, you just, like, play 4 of these, right? And, like, it's self-enabling. Yeah, they sit there and they pump the tokens. Like, it provides vampire tokens for it to pump. That's kind of guess, actually. That seems great. Tormented Profit. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead, you may play those cards this turn. Neat. And this is notably if you would draw any card for the turn. Not just your 1 card for the turn. Yeah, this card will be very silly at EDH. It's a commander too. This feels like a card that's like waiting to be broken, right? Yes, this card also prevents you from decking, right? Because it replaces your draws with exiles. Yeah, it stops you from losing to mill. I like this. I don't know what we would do with this offhand to start, but I will not be surprised when this card gets cracked in half somewhere. Falcon Wrath Forbearer. 3/1 flyer, can't block. Deals combat damage to a player, create a blood token. Sacrifice 2 blood tokens. Return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Maybe the fact that it can't block's a pretty big downer. It is self-enabling in a way though. Could see play in a vampire deck, but also wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. Zombies you control have flying. Sacrifice a non-token zombie. Create an XX token where X is the sacrificed creature's toughness. Probably not good enough. The beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Creatures you control get 1/1 and get trample. Target land gets make 3 mana. Draw a card. If you control a creature with 3 power or greater, you gain 3 life. Missed partner text. Is that an EDH thing? What? Where does it say partner on this card? It's a joke. Oh. It's probably too expensive to see play. This card is sweet. Exploit. When it enters a battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. When it exploits a creature, destroy a planeswalker. The beginning of your upkeep, this deals 1 damage to you. Maybe this could be a decent early threat that allows creatures to or allows zombies to be playable. It's sad. It can sacrifice itself. So it can just be 2 mana destroy target planeswalker. But it's a shame this isn't a Necrotal. It's probably too good if it's just Necrotal, right? Thanks for the follows, Eldar, and I don't care. Grolnok. When a frog you control attacks, mills 3 cards. Every permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library. Exile it with a croak counter. You may play lands and cast spells from among those you own in exile with croak counters on them. Permanent is put into your graveyard from your library. Exile it with a croak counter. So the way this works, the frog has to be in play for you to play cards with the croak counters on them, right? So if they kill this, you lose that. Something that is noteworthy is this is in the same colors as the Bear of Litjara. So that could be sweet. Bear of Litjara makes 2 changelings. Yeah, they're not tied to this card specifically. So you could draw a second Grolnok and then play it after the fact. But yeah, maybe worth trying out in standard curving bears into this. Could be sweet. Alana and Elena, the partners. First strike, reach, beginning of combat on your turn, put X 1/1 counters another target creature you control where X is this thing power, it gains haste. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Seems okay. It is a green-red legend for Bard class. It notably only gives other things extra attack and haste, so it doesn't self-enable. Yeah, very similar vibes to our werewolf card that we have, the 3-drop that gives something 1 attack and haste. These cards curve into each other nicely too. So like you play the 3-drop on 3, you play this on 4, and then what? You get to attack 4 or 7 on turn 4. Seems fine. 4 mana is a lot. Definitely a brawl card. Maybe constructed. Maybe. Hamlet Vanguard. 1/1 for 3 with Ward 2. Enters the battlefield for each other non-token human you control. 2/1/1 counters on it. So it's big sag that this says non-token, right? It's big sag that this says non-token. Because you can't, unfortunately, you can't curve the make 2 tokens on 2 into this. That being said, like, the Catilda deck we played with felt kind of reasonable, and this seems like a much better payoff than Sigarda does, right? Like if you curve 1-drop human into 2-drop human into this, you get to have a 5/5 on turn 3. I would like to make a motion that we refer to Hamlet Vanguard as Footloose, because he does not want to join the dance and get +1/+1 counters from the 1/1 creatures that join the dance makes. He does not want to dance, chat. Headless Rider, 3/1 for 3. When this another non-token zombie dies, gets a 2/2 black zombie token. This could be okay. It's pretty good alongside Champion of the Parish, right? Because it like makes all your zombies double up when they start dying. 3 mana's a little on the expensive side for an aggressive deck. Yeah, notable these tokens don't have decay, but it also only triggers on non-tokens, so decay zombies don't really work with it. There are a lot of heads in the Headless Rider chat. Hopeful Innate. Remove 2 1/1 counters from among creatures you control. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. So like nothing super impressive to write home about, but almost assuredly just a playable 1-drop, right? Like you'll probably be attacking with this with 2, 3, maybe even 4 power other creatures, and this thing's going to scale up a little bit while also providing a little bit of utility to kill miscellaneous things like chariots on the other side of the board. Thanks for the follow, Wise Owl King. Owl Pack Piper. Can't be countered. You put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If it's a wolf or werewolf, untap Howlpack Piper. Activate this as a sorcery. Okay. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield or transforms, or the top 6 cards of your library, reveal a creature from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Neat. Yeah, so there's some jank build around with this, especially when you consider that it's uncounterable. And then the fact that if it's a wolf or werewolf, untap Howlpack Piper is kind of absurd, right? Like the very first card we looked at today was a very powerful 6-drop werewolf, right? So like you can on turn 5 you get to untap with this and put 2 6-drops into play theoretically, right? And then this card is kind of an enabler for all of your werewolves because it gives you something to spend your mana on that doesn't make you cast a spell. Yeah, and then it's immediately night. Like this card seems like it could be very real. And notably, this puts any creatures from your hand into play. So in older non-rotating formats, you'd be using this to cheat bigger, scarier things into play. Yeah, thankfully Bone Crusher Giants rotated, so I don't just have to say dies to stomp next. Hull Breach Horror. Unleash the Kraken. 7/8 flash can't be countered. When you cast a spell, choose one. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. Excuse me? Excuse me? This card is very silly and sweet. I like me a big dumb flash bomb. Yeah, it's every spell you cast is a remand shit. Oh my gosh, it works with Leer because it's not countering, it's just returning them to their hand. It turns opt into actual remand. That's great. Oh my gosh, it can return itself to your hand too. So you play this with Consider up and they go to kill it and you cast Consider and bounce your card if they could recast the removal spell. Yeah, this card's sweet. We're gonna play a few things with 4 of this card. Ill-Tempered Loner is dealt any damage. It deals that much damage to any target. Gets 2 extra attack till end of turn. Whenever any permanent you control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. Okay. Yeah. I like it. Another card that combos with Star of Extinction in Historic. It combos with Burn Down the House in Standard. Yeah. Yeah, it does. You flip this over and then you burn down the house. I will burn this game to the ground. Howlpack Avenger's definitely into it. Yeah, that sounds sweet. Thanks for the follow, Firas. Does it need to still be alive to deal the damage? It does not. Enters the battlefield with suspect counters on it equal the greatest number of creatures a player controls. Remove a suspect counter, draw a card, sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's just like a bunch of clues all in one. Sure. Seems potentially okay. I guess the downside to this is it's not very good to play out early. Yeah, this one's probably not good enough because you can't play it out early. Thanks for the entire year, little Siggy. Welcome back. Oh no, chat. Catilda died. Flying lifelink protects for vampires. Power tough to equal to their permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. So we count spirits and enchantments with this. Enchant creature on the backside. Enchanted creature has flying lifelink or some number of spirits or enchantments. Maybe. Depends on if there's a go wide spirit deck in the format. Kessig Wolf Rider. Exile 3 cards from your graveyard. Create a 3/2 wolf creature token, 1/2 with menace. Maybe okay as a red aggressive card. It does make wolves, but notably isn't a wolf or werewolf itself. Deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control if you pay it for 2, or you can cleave it, and then it is kind of a lightning helix that doesn't go dome. It's a neat design. Seems fine. It's an instant, which is nice. Yeah, so like you wouldn't play this card for just the cleave cost. However, the pretend cleave isn't here, right? Pretend the square brackets aren't there, and this just does X to something where X is the number of creatures you control for 2 mana. That's pretty close to a playable card. So this is close to a playable card on its own, and then it can scale off your mana to gain you a bunch of life in the late game. Mirror Hall Mimic. We have Mirror Hall Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. Okay, so we have a clone. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except it's a spirit. Okay. Sure. That's sweet. This is another even-costed clone for the Gyruda combo deck. BT dubs. Yeah, clone with upside. It is any creature too, correct. Odric Blood Curse enters the battlefield. Create X blood tokens, where X is the number of abilities among flying, first strike, double strike. That's you found. This card has a lot of words for being a vanilla 3/3. That is such an apt summary. I have never seen a text box that full for a card that does this little. Old Rustenstein enters the battlefield at the beginning of your upkeep. Mill a card. If it's a land, get a treasure token. If it's a creature, get a 1/1 insect. If it's a non-land, get a blood token. This could be an okay self-bill enabler. We have played some of the Willowgeist variation in Brews in the format, and that archetype definitely felt like it wanted more self-bill enablers, and this could do a very reasonable job at doing that. Overcharged Amalgam chat. This type of crap is my jam. Flying Flash Exploit. When it exploits a creature, counter target spell, activated, or triggered ability. And remember, this can exploit itself. Remember, chat, under capitalism, self-exploitation is always an option. So, this can just be a kind of awkward 4-mana counterspell. However, it's got some flexibility, so you can sacrifice other worse creatures so it can stick around. How is something that large only a 3/3? Well, you know, you can exploit an unflipped Delver. 1/2 for 2 has all the activated abilities of creatures cards exiled with it. Exile a creature card from your graveyard and put a 1/1 counter on this. We have Gristlebrand at home in standard right now, right? I'm pretty sure there's Asmodeus the Archfiend. So you could do this, and you can exile Asmodeus, and then you could pay 3 to draw 7 cards. Cool. Yeah, I'll probably do that at some point. Probably won't be very good, but it will definitely be great. Path of Peril. 3 mana, destroy all creatures, mana value 2 or less. 6 mana, destroy all creatures. This is a card that is definitely contextual in terms of what's good in the format. So if Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, spoiler on the spoilers, they reprinted Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. If Thalia decks and White Weenie are very good, this card seems super reasonable. However, if bigger decks that are playing 3, 4, and 5 mana creatures are more common. This card obviously gets a bit worse. That being said, yes, this does kill all tokens, right? So it kills Chariot tokens, it kills Ren and 7 tokens, etc. You know, we talked about Kaya and stuff. If Kaya's in the format, this could be good for cleaning up tokens that she's making. So would not be surprised if this sees some amount of play. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, chat. I've seen a number of people give really hot takes that they think that this card could push Epiphany out of the format. While I would be surprised if Thalia pushes Epiphany out of the format. What I would not be surprised is if Thalia forces the Epiphany decks to be built differently. So I would bet that Thalia will push those blue-red decks to play more good 1-mana removal. So like Frostbite, for example, could be a card that we see those decks come back to be able to have efficient way to kill this. Yeah, I think we're going to see those decks get built a little bit differently, but I'd be really surprised if they disappear altogether. Runo Stormkirk. Enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You can reveal it. If it's a creature card with mana value 6 or greater, transform this. So kind of self-enabling. If you can have it put a creature back on top of your deck. When it attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. That creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, or Octopus. Create 2 of those instead. That seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for a payoff that's not very good. Thanks for the over 2 years, Marky. Welcome back. Stensia Uprising. The beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 red human creature token. Then if you control exactly 13 permanents, you may sacrifice this to do 7 damage to any target. So this card technically combos with multiple copies of itself, right? So you have like 2 uprisings in play. The first one triggers, you go to 13 permanents, you sacrifice it, you go to 12 permanents because you sacrifice it, deal 7. The next one triggers, you go to 13 permanents, you sacrifice it, you deal 7. That being said, this is a 4-mana card that doesn't create a huge board impact the turn you play it. It gives you a 1/1 right away, but that is just a 1/1. I could maybe see this being kind of a sweet control finisher. It like plays to the board, and then if you have multiple, they like pop off and kill your opponent a whole bunch. That also, if the game goes really long and you have a bunch of lands and other things in play, this notably says you have to control exactly 13 permanents. Like if you have over 13 permanents in play, this is just a constant flow of tokens that are only okay. But could maybe be a neat build around. Kirkham, thanks for the 11 months. Welcome back. Ulvenwald Oddity. We were joking about this card when we were going through, pulling up which cards we wanted to talk about at the start of the thing. I think there's a chance that this card's not very good. Like, look at the format. Look at the format and look at all of the other cards that this is competing with in that 4 slot. There's so many good 3 and 4s here. And like, obviously, you could turn it into an 8/8 that makes your board bigger. But I really feel like this one could go either way. I wouldn't be super surprised if it ends up seeing play, but I also just like wouldn't be fazed if you told me we fast forward a month from now and this card doesn't have any results to it. Yeah, this card's definitely... The big question is, like, I think this card's certainly outclassed by Azeka's Chariot. The question is, do you have room for this card in addition to Azeka's Chariot? I'm not sure the answer to that question is yes. Voice of the Blessed. Ooh, it's a cleric for cleric pod, chat. If you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on this. As long as it has 4 or more counters on it, it gets flying or vigilance. As long as it has 10 or more counters on it, it gets indestructible. Sure. Super excited to give this a try in Cleric Pod. Sounds lovely. This is a Skyclave Apparition is a spirit, right? Sweet. Yeah, it is. Cool. So this is another card that in Cleric Pod lets us pod into Skyclave Apparition too. So nice flexibility there as well. Voldaren Bloodcaster. When this or another non-token creature you control dies, you get a blood token. When you create a blood token, if you have 5 or more blood tokens, transform it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, one target blood token you control becomes a 2/2 bat creature with flying and haste in addition to its other types. And this one's not been errata to say until end of turn, so this permanently makes you blood bats. And honestly, the front side of this is like pretty reasonable, like 2/1 flyer for 2, make a blood when it comes into play. We talked about that 3/1 that makes blood tokens when it deals damage to the opponent. Yeah, this seems like a pretty okay blood token payoff. The question is like, are there enough other cards that instantly make blood tokens that you'll ever be able to transform this consistently? To which I'm not sure the answer is yes. That being said, add 1 mana of any color, cast this only for a vampire. Create a blood token. This costs 1 less to activate for each vampire you control. So get all the way down to free to tap to create a blood token. Could be worth trying. Welcoming Vampire. When 1 or more creatures with 2 power or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This only triggers once per turn. Seems pretty reasonable. Doesn't cantrip on itself. Has an okay stat line. Notably is not legendary. Yep, so you could play it and then play another copy. Even only triggering once per turn, it still seems pretty reasonable. When this enters the battlefield, scry 2. You may sacrifice the egg. Wait, when you sacrifice the egg, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Okay. Maybe, I guess. Yeah, I guess you're supposed to play this with exploit, right? This is a limited exploit card for sure. Is it a constructed playable exploit card? Probably not. Probably not. Hero's Downfall. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. The first of several great removal reprints in this set. Probably not even a 4-of. This card kind of competes in the same slot as Soul Shatter in your removal. But I could see some decks preferring this card depending on what the format shapes up like. Abrade kills a Chariot, kills a 3/3 for 2. Good flexible piece of removal. Valorous Stance. This card is subtly very powerful. And the reason why this card is so good is think about cards like Leer and Goldspan Dragon, and more importantly, the types of decks that play cards like Leer and Goldspan Dragon and Ashmouth. And when you think about those decks, you know that Leer, Goldspan, Ashmouth, all of those are cards that are must kill on sight, right? Like you're not winning a game where any of those cards stay in play. But at the same time, the decks that play Ashmouth, Leer, or Goldspan don't play a lot of threats. So a card like Valorous Stance is very valuable because it's a card that you could put a bunch of copies of in your deck, especially post-board, to have removal to kill your opponent's stuff when they have it consistently, that's not just a blank when they don't draw their threat. Or they draw one Leer and you drew two Valorous stances, you're not just left holding a dead removal spell. The fact that this can kill a number of must-answer threats in the format, but it can also save your important threat from a removal spell or a sweeper is just super valuable, and the flexibility makes this card really strong. Blood Tithe Harvester. 3/2 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you get a blood token. Sacrifice it. Target creature gets -X/-X, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. This seems very reasonable. So it just pretend that this activated ability doesn't exist. A 3/2 for 2 that makes a blood token seems pretty close to constructed playable, especially if you have any amount of vampire synergies in your deck. And then you mix in the fact that it can be a kind of flexible removal spell, albeit not a super powerful one on occasion. And I think you have a very constructed playable card here. Gift of Fangs. Enchanted creature gets 2/2 if it's a vampire. Otherwise, it gets -2/-2. So Deadweight has seen some amount of play in Magic's formats with some consistency. If there is a vampire deck in the format, I can definitely see a vampire deck wanting to play this as a card that can occasionally act like a little bit of reach. The card that this kind of competes with in the format is Lash of Malice, is a very similar effect. It's a 1-mana black card that gives something -2 toughness. So the question is, does this feel better than that in the average situation if you're interested in a 1-mana effect like this? Wash Away. I think this card's a trap, chat. I think the number of situations where you'd rather be playing Wash Away than Negate or Disdainful Stroke in this format are going to be really few and far between. And I think that people are just going to play this because they hate Epiphany, putting themselves in kind of worse spots. All right, that's all of it. Chat. Are there any cards from Crimson Vow that I didn't? Are there any cards from Crimson Vow that I didn't look at? Storm Chaser Drake. This is the part where chat suggests a bunch of limited cards and asks me why they're not constructed playable. Ooh, this is a good shout, actually. Yeah, this is probably fine. This could, I want to try this in Historic with Feather. I don't know that we have enough cards in Standard to make this one Standard playable, but this seems fine. Dollhouse. Exile a creature card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of the exile card, except it's a 0/0. Has 1/1 for each construct you control. Not only does a Braid exist in this format, but chat, you want to pay 6 mana for a 1/1? Like, not only did they reprint a Braid, but like 6 mana Prismari Command was already legal. 6 mana 1/1 is not great. Exile 3 cards from your graveyard. It gains first strike. Discard a card. Return. Exile Fleeting Spirit. Return it to the battlefield. To beginning of the next end step. This could be okay. Maybe okay. I don't know. It is a spirit. If there's a spirit deck in the format, this could be okay as a spirit card, but the overall power level feels a little bit low. Enters a battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, create a blood token. Maybe we have some okay blood payoffs. That could be fine. Shame it doesn't have a second power. Boarded window to stop the turns deck. Stop it. Stop it. Stop spamming chat. This isn't stopping the turn stack. We just got done talking about a Braden Prismari command, shit. All right. Think we're good? Wandering Mind. Exile top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it in your hand. The rest in the bottom of your library in any order. I mean, 6 is a lot. How many hits do I need to be happy with this? With 24 hits, I'm 96% to hit. With 20 hits, I'm 92% to hit. Yeah. Yeah, that could be pretty good. Like 20 is a little low. 24 is like pretty reasonable. Yeah, the fact that this grabs planeswalkers and enchantments and artifacts, any non-creature, means this one. I could see this being playable. I think Olivia will be highly played. I skimmed that and didn't think so. Let's take a peek. Attacks. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains, or you don't control, a legendary vampire. Exile this card. 6 is so much mana. Yeah, like you could turn 3 her in Historic off of Sorin, but like on turn 3 she doesn't do anything in Historic, right? Like she's not bringing anything back on turn 3. Yeah, it's still a lot, Moon Boots. Like you could cast a different, better card. Yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts, right? Like you have to get into combat. You have to have them not have a removal spell or have another legendary vampire. You have to have something worth reanimating. Her stat line's only okay. Yeah, we looked at it, Gar. Sergeant Pepperhands, thanks for the brand new tier 1 sub. I appreciate the support. Welcome to the channel. It's my full-time gig, and I wouldn't be able to be here without folks like you. So thanks for keeping me around. Lantern loss, enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. Exile Lantern, exile all cards, small graveyards, and then draw a card. So we have Relic of Progenitus at home. What's the zombie horse? We didn't talk about a zombie horse. You know what the card name is? Well, so this isn't just worse Relic, because you do get to pick the card it exiles when it enters. No, this isn't a 1-drop. Cobbled Lancer. Additional cost to cast a spell, exile a creature from your graveyard. So you can never play it on 1, but the fact that it draws a card later is kind of neat. I guess it's tough to be able to cast this early, right? It's probably not very good. Great limited card. Probably not a very good constructed card. This is okay. 3 mana for a 2/2 slot. Oh yeah, this is a good shout. Choose target player reveal their hand. You get a non-land card for the mana value 2 or less. That player discards their hand. So not quite Inquisition, but can also just grab anything late. This one I'll probably see some amount of play. The question in Standard is this card better than Duress with how good Duress is against aggro right now? All right. And as a final wrap up on the set review, remember, if you want to play with these new lovely cards, November 14th, this Sunday, the Hoaglandia Open Series will be returning. You can sign up for that now here on MTG Melee. The link is in chat. It's going to be Standard. If you haven't played in our events before, these events pay out scaling prizes based on the number of people playing. So first and second place always get $100 and $120 in store credit. But past that, this is a double elimination tournament where everybody that gets at least 3 match wins walks away with prizes. We also have some door prizes for people that bring some sweet decks that get some match wins with them. We'll be having coverage of this event if you can't play it but want to watch New Standard all day on Sunday the 14th. I'm excited to share that in addition to myself, I will be having Jim Davis and Amy the Amazonian. So we have, in addition to Cool Stuff Inc., we've got a few new excellent sponsors for this tournament. Metafy, Coalescence Apparel, Untapped, and Fatal Core TCG are all folks that have we'll see banner ads for on the day of the tournament that helped us expand our production a little bit. So excited to have a third commentator and then some extra people behind the scenes. So people that haven't seen our tournaments before, we usually average about 70% of our live time showing new matches of Magic the Gathering. And my goal with added production is the goal of added production is to try and get, well, I want to get that up to 80% is my goal. I think it's a little bit of a lofty goal. And for comparison sakes, because 70 sounds a little bit low, the average Wizards run tournament has between 40 to 50% of their live time showing matches of Magic. So our 70% is already really good, and I want to do better. So I've got extra people who are going to be recording extra time shifted features so we can bring actually just as much Magic as we humanly can every single round. Amy is casting. Yeah, Amy the Amazonian and Jim. So I'm excited. Will we all be commentating simultaneously? No, we're going to have 3 people. We're going to have pairs of commentators still. I think I'm meeting with them Tuesday night to work out technical logistics and sort the details. But I think the loose plan is I'm going to cover like the first 3 rounds with one of them. The 2 of them will cover a couple of rounds in the middle without me. And then I'll cover the back half of the tournament, with whichever one didn't do the first half. So we'll split it up so people aren't working, the entire 8 hours or 7 hours that we do without reasonable breaks. Thanks for the 15 months, Cenotaph. Yes, 11 a.m. Central, so noon Eastern / 9 a.m. PT.